Joining me in studio is trial attorney Erica Wilson. Erica, great to see you. And also joining me, constitutional lawyer Andrew Lieb. Andrew, great to see you again as well. Erica, let me just start with you and get your reaction to this decision.
You know, Michael, this decision is going to have a rippling effect, and I do agree that it does impact more than just abortions. It is going to impact the health of women. So I am going to be waiting with bated breath to hopefully, when we get to a point to one day, well, this decision can then be overturned as well.
All right, so looking forward to that. Andrew Lieb, let's start off by talking about, first and foremost, what exactly does this mean for the average American woman?
It starts off with where you live now, Michael, because they passed it back to the people's representatives, which means each individual state will be only subject to what we call not strict scrutiny, reasonable basis where they defer to the legislature and say, your state could do whatever you want. So there's states that have trigger laws, and the moment this was decided, abortions became illegal.
All right, so as best, can you explain what was vitiated by the court? They talked about the decision in the original Roe v. Wade and Casey versus the Planned Parenthood case. They were wrongly decided. That's essentially what the justices said. So tell me about what they mean by that and what was basically vitiated by this decision.
You might have heard a lot of people saying, Michael, that the word abortion isn't in the Constitution. So we have to find it from somewhere else. And the way they found it is what's called due process. That's what Casey used to find. And they used it what's called substantive due process. You have a right to privacy. You have a right to make decisions for your own life. In fact, the decision lists 9 different rights under substantive due process is how they found it. But what the Supreme Court and Alito says is, guess what? You got to look to the history and tradition, and you have to look at the context of ordered liberty. Really, this decision is about constitutional interpretation, and should we look to only history, or should we believe that the Constitution's a living doctrine, as the liberal dissent would want you to do? The conservatives won, and they're showing we're into originalism while understanding the doctrine in the future.
All right, so here's another question I have for you. Often we try to term our courts, whether they're activist courts. Would you call this an activist decision? Did they step out from following precedent? Obviously they did, but the claim is that it's okay under these circumstances because the precedent was clearly wrongly decided.
When you use the word precedent, I'm a big fan of this because it's the integrity of the court. It means that we have to follow prior decisions, and stare decisis is the analysis under which they did this. The troubling thing for a lot of people isn't that Roe v. Wade was overturned. When I talk about people, it's legal people. It's that Casey was overturned. Because as Justice Kavanaugh said when he went before the Senate to be confirmed, it's precedent on precedent. So now what we understand is, what does that mean moving forward? It means whatever the justices of the day say it means.
Erica Wilson, let me get you back into the conversation here. That part there that Andrew was just talking about is the scary part of this decision, because it could also mean that there are some other precedents that could fall, including gay rights and even contraception. It's got to be scary times.
Yeah, and so to his point, again, it's not explicit in the Constitution, and so what it's characterized is a liberty interest. Do you have a liberty interest in having a right to have an abortion? Do you have a liberty interest in being in a gay marriage? And so again, it appears, and based on the decision that was made, that they are going to go then and start attacking some other liberty interests, because again, it's not narrowly defined. There's a very broad interpretation to what liberty interest is, but we do have precedent that already has said, hey, you do have a right to this, and now the Supreme Court is coming back and saying you no longer have a right to that. And so it is a dangerous precedent that they're setting in terms of what other rights are they going to start to strip away.
Yeah, and I think, Andrew, it's fair to say that they're probably sitting around, folks who are in favor of this decision, planning further attacks on various rights that may have fallen under the umbrella that was used to make these decisions.
Well, Michael, here's my warning to them. The right to choose your children's own education is under that same rubric. So to challenge the 8 other ones, which liberals like, will also challenge that one. I must point out to you, though, that while Justice Alito, who's an originalist, said, hey, abortion's different because it's about potential life, Thomas took a whole different position, and he said, let's get rid of substantive due process altogether. Get rid of all 9 unless another part of the Constitution gives them a basis. And that's really what we should be focusing on, Justice Thomas in the future.
You know, polls show that majority of Americans wanted Roe v. Wade to stay in place. There could be a lot of reasons for that, but at the end of the day, that's what the polls show. But my understanding of the court and the way it's situated in our overall system of politics here in this country is that they shouldn't be affected by that. Should there be any concern at all that the majority of Americans are against the decision that they handed down today?
I'm concerned about it, and I think Justice Roberts is concerned about it based on the integrity and legitimacy of the court. But I will say the Alito opinion went out of its way, and I'm paraphrasing, to say we are beyond politics and we have to make decisions based on the Constitution, full stop. So moving forward, they believe that integrity and legitimacy is based on grounding it in the originalism and text of the Constitution. Now, if you are one of these people that are into judicial pragmatism or, like we say, a living Constitution, this was a terrible decision today.
Yeah, I would have to agree. And we heard that come up over and over again in the confirmation hearings of particularly Amy Coney Barrett, and talking about that exact thing. Let me ask you this, Erica. Are you concerned that this court is moving in a direction that could take America away from following precedent, which really, precedent is about having people understand what the law is and how their actions should flow. Women have relied on Roe v. Wade for 50+ years. Now things have changed. Are you concerned that that might be sort of the way this court is going and could create a lot of confusion?
It could, and I see a lot of a rippling effect with this as well, because again, we do follow precedent, and that is something that is supposed to be respected by the courts. This is something that we argue as attorneys, say, hey, there is already precedent. The highest court in the land has already decided, therefore these lower courts should follow it. So it is going to trickle down from the Supreme Court all the way down to the lower courts, and I think it's going to be damaging. We're going to see a lot of litigation coming up. We're going to see a lot of new cases coming up before the Supreme Court, and so it's going to be an interesting terrain for attorneys to kind of go down, but we just kind of hope that we can kind of still preserve the rights of people that have already been established by the courts.
Absolutely. And you know, Andrew, I want to find out from you who you think is going to be most affected by this decision.
Well, obviously, you're going to see poorer people in states where they can't travel from the state that had a trigger law. I'm really concerned about these people that can't get out, particularly when you're seeing new laws being passed that don't protect the woman when she has a medical emergency. So that's going to be a very big issue moving forward. And we don't know where the line is going to be when we see reasonable basis, when we see deferral to the legislature in the future, and there's going to be a lot of people that are going to have a lot of risks in health, particularly when doctors can't intervene even though they know how to.
All right. You know, we've been talking a little bit about people who are perhaps against this decision, but there are plenty of folks out there who support it. Dr. James Dobson, he's a well-known Christian leader, he put out a statement that was actually in support of the excuse me, that was in support of the decision by the Supreme Court. So I want to pull that up now and see what he had to say about this decision. Can we pull that up? All right, so basically he said, excuse me, Roe was built on a lie that somewhere hidden in our Constitution, there existed a right to destroy children in the womb. The ruling in 1973 shocked the nation and divided the country. It was an exercise in raw judicial power. History will judge it as one of the court's most shameful moments. But now the court has corrected its mistake. Roe is dead. And as a result, millions of innocent babies will have a chance to live and be welcomed into the world and protected by the promise of our Constitution and Declaration of Independence. Andrew, I want to get you to respond to that. It sort of highlights a lot of the ideas we talked about in terms of, you know, that this precedent was wrong and there were problems with it from the beginning. But love to get your response.
First, I'll note what Justice Alito pointed out. He pointed out roughly 51.5% of the population in the challenged state that we were before in this case are women, but 55+% vote. And what he said is that this is for you to bring to the polls, to go run for election, to go vote, because at the end of the day, the court did not say abortion is off the table. The court did not say abortion is illegal. What the court said is use your political power and have your voices heard, whichever side of the aisle you stand.
You know, what's interesting, Erica, is that now what I see happening is this could be the type of decision that really, as Andrew said, mobilizes folks. And we're going to find out what's going on outside the Supreme Court at some point. But at the end of the day, folks are out there. They were out there when it was leaked about a month ago. Do you see that happening? What do you see as a result of this in terms of how we as a society are going to react?
I hope that this kind of elucidates the issue that we have, that you do need to vote. Because again, when we don't have the precedent from the Supreme Court, now everything goes down to the lower court. We have the right to choose. Some judges are voted onto the bench, our legislators, our senators, our congressmen. This is the time to kind of get out and vote and make a decision and vote for the people who will protect your rights.
Yeah, because now it's firmly a political process now, right? So we got to sort of mobilize in that sense. Andrew, what's next?
I would say what next is what Justice Thomas has already told us, and what Erica alluded to. We have these 9 rights that are at stake, but I'm going to give a suggestion to any litigator out there. If I was going to litigate moving forward, I don't talk about precedent as much as getting a historian on my staff, because the conservative majority, both yesterday when we dealt with the gun case in New York and today, went back to history to determine what the Constitution says. So we got to fight with history.
All right. Well, Andrew Lieb, I want to thank you so much for taking out the time to be with me today. Truly appreciate it. Always love your insights. You have a great afternoon. Right now, Erica, you're going to be sticking around with me. Today's landmark decision, of course, has folks voicing strong opinions on both sides of the issue. We have sifted through some of your comments on Court TV's social media pages, and we're going to share some of those later on in our Talkback segment. You don't want to miss that. But coming